When I was 12, my grandmother came to live with us. She wasn't ill, but at 89, my mother didn't want her living alone anymore. My mom worked, so she had a caretaker help during the day, and on Saturday afternoons, when my mom did her shopping, I would watch my grandma. She was a kind and cheerful lady, and she would often tell me stories about her childhood. During this particular week, I had taken a book out of the library called Tales of Terror. That Saturday afternoon, we were in the living room folding a basket of clean clothes, and I happened to ask her, "What's the scariest thing you can remember?" She paused and sat back in her chair. "Well," she said, "when I was a girl, a little older than you, we lived in a small village. The only thing remarkable about it was the Abbey. About 4 miles outside the town, up on a hill. No one knew exactly how old it was, but it looked like it had been there forever. An order of nuns had taken up residence there, and with the help of workmen from the village, they had begun a restoration. When I was 14, I was hired to work in the kitchens. The Abbey was really the only source of employment for the village, and I was happy to have the work. My job was to clear the tables after meals, do the dishes, and sweep and mop the floors. Most days, I would quickly finish the dishes and use my sweeping as a reason to explore. The massive stone entry opened onto what was called the Great Hall, with several large rooms off of each side. This section was in fairly good condition and used to greet important guests. The kitchens and sleeping quarters were on the right, and to the left was the chapel and a wide stone path that led to the oldest and most dilapidated section of the Abbey. This was, of course, the part that I was most curious about. As the weeks passed, I took notice that every day at noon, a large plate of food was prepared and taken out of the kitchen door, across the courtyard and handed to the Mother Abbess. She, and only she, would carry the dish past the chapel and down the shaded path to the old part of the Abbey. She would return in 20 minutes or so, and then retire immediately to her room above the dining hall. The Mother Abbess was quite old and very strict, and I tried my best to keep out of her way. I would do my work and took pride in a job well done. Things went along this way until late September of my first year there. 2 of the nuns became ill, and then 2 became 4, and 4 became 6. It spread quickly, until the few left that were healthy spent their days taking care of the sick. I had been asked to clear the dishes and then head home until farther notice. They said they would send for me after the sickness had passed. I finished my work and walked out into something I'd never seen before, a completely empty courtyard. I looked down the old stone path and thought, this may be my only chance. So I took a quick glance around and moved into the cool shadows of the walkway, up several steps and into the old wing of the Abbey. Outside, it was early afternoon, but in the dark stone hallway, it was twilight. Here, it was completely silent. I could hear my footsteps echo as I stepped slowly down the hall. The passage went on for a while, and it ended at the base of a narrow stairwell. Going up, I felt the curving stone walls with my hand. At the top of the stairs, the hall branched out in 3 directions. I considered retreating, worried I would get lost. That was when I saw the footsteps, clearly marked in the thick dust of the floor. So I followed, down the hallway to the left, up another stairway so narrow that only one person could fit. At the top of the stairs, there was only a landing with 2 heavy oak doors on either side, directly opposite each other. The doors each had a small barred window about 12 inches wide. That was when I heard the whispering. It was a constant volley of words, spoken with urgency. I crept closer to the door to see if I could understand, but the words seemed to connect together, making some other language foreign to me. I don't know what possessed me, but I inched toward the bars. I had to see what was inside. Peeking through them, I saw only darkness. As my eyes adjusted, though, I saw the outline of a small figure. A woman. She was turned away from me. Her long hair was matted and unkempt, and she was whispering at a feverish pitch. It was then that something soft brushed against my ankle, and I fell back against the door with a scream. Something black jumped away from me. I saw that it was just the Abbey cat. He must have followed me from the kitchen looking for something to eat. Standing back up, I brushed the dust from my clothes, and then I noticed the whispering had stopped. I turned around slowly and saw her face was just inches from mine. Her eyes were solid white, and I was so close that I could see tiny red veins running through them. She must have been blind, but it wasn't just her eyes. Before I fainted, I saw that she was grinning at me, and I heard her whisper 3 words. We played till we died, and now we're all dead. Graveyard Train. I saw them last night. I'm the main keeper and partial owner of a small cemetery on the East Coast. My job is to make sure things go smoothly. I'm in charge of everything from burials and arrangements to maintaining the grounds and sometimes even sales, caskets and such. Although I am encouraged to upsell as much as possible, I never do. It doesn't seem right to try and get every last penny out of someone who has just lost a loved one. And after all, it's just a box. It being prettier than others isn't really of the utmost importance. Last time I checked, the dead don't care about fashion. I just hope they're staying dead. This week I drew the short straw and had to work the 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. We usually have a security guard, but he had called in due to a family emergency. There had been some strange happenings occurring on site recently, and we all thought that a group of local kids might be vandalizing the property at night. I set up in our main office, which was located in the dead center of our 40.6 acres of property. There was an old VCR in the lounge that had been there for years, and when I pressed play, I was surprised to see Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein in old-fashioned lettering. Frankenstein was just about to grab the main character when I heard what sounded like a small explosion outside. And then another, and another. Grabbing my flashlight, I wondered if the local kids had broken in and set off some unused fireworks from the 4th of July. The idea of calling the cops immediately passed through my mind, but I thought better of it. It was probably just some kids after all. If they didn't know anyone was there besides them, perhaps I could even give them a scare. Liking that idea, I shut the flashlight off and crept out the back entrance. Quickly running across to the edge of the cemetery, my body was now concealed in thick shadows as I made my way closer to the explosions. There was a 4th and then 5th boom, and then silence. Suddenly, I saw the outline of 5 figures standing together around the water of a large pond we maintain. Gotcha, I thought, a wide smile spreading across my face. Thinking over the best way to scare them off, I decided on the old police routine. Running over behind the largest gravestone in sight, I slid down and realized I was now only 20 or so feet away. I was filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, and for a moment I thought better of the whole plan, but excitement won out. "Freeze, you sons of bitches! It's the police!" I yelled, running out towards them and making as much noise as possible. Now, the thought had never occurred to me that they might actually freeze, and as I made my way closer, fear took over. The 5 figures hadn't even flinched at my screaming. In fact, they weren't moving at all. My running slowed to a crawl as I now stood only 6 or 7 feet away. A few moments of silence passed by, and still the figures didn't move. I took one step closer and turned on my flashlight. It flickered for a moment and then held heavy on the backs of 5 individuals. And then it hit me. They weren't kids, they were adults, and they were all dressed as they had been buried. I even recognized some of them. There was a tall man of 50 that had suffered a heart attack just days ago, and there was a woman standing at the edge that had been 93 years old. I remembered because the obituary had said she had died the very day of her birthday. Fear was indeed taking over now, and I forced myself to say the only thing that would pop into my head. "Hello?" I called out tentatively. They showed no sign of having noticed me and only stood together staring into the dark water of the pond. I ran back into the office and called 911. Even in my shocked state, I was aware enough to realize that explaining that the dead had risen from their graves probably wouldn't be the best idea. I told the operator that a few adults had broken into the cemetery. Within 15 minutes, a single police car arrived and 2 young men stepped out of the vehicle. They drove around for a short while and then walked the rest of the hills on foot, finding nothing, of course. When they arrived back at the main office, they explained that there was no trace of anyone. They did, however, admit to seeing more than one trail of dirt leading down to the pond. The next morning, I started to tell the other workers about what I had seen, and then thought better of it. Seeing 5 recently dead figures staring at their reflection in the middle of the night? I'll keep that to myself. I've thought of something better. I work the night shift again tonight. I'm going to grab a shovel and see for myself if those 5 are still where they should be.